Right, 14 minutes past 9 to the big story of the weekend, and that is Katie Taylor's victory against Chantelle Cameron at the 3 Arena on Saturday evening. Phil Egan is here with us to give us some analysis. Actually didn't see the odds beforehand, but I presume she wasn't. I don't know. She wasn't massive underdog, but she would have been an underdog.
Yeah, underdog, walking to the ring first for the first time in her professional career. And yeah, it all just seemed to play into her hands in terms of the fights even beforehand. Gary Cully was on the last card in May when he lost. He won. Then even his post-fight interview, he's there saying, let's raise the roof now for Katie Taylor. This is her night now. And then Katie walks out. The ring walk is a good bit shorter than in May, obviously. And she just looked so much better. Emmett Brennan was in this very seat on Thursday with us, and he said after being at the public workouts on Wednesday, he thought that Katie Taylor was going to win. He said she just looks different this time around. And you could actually see even when she got into the ring and they squared off that physically she just looked in better shape than she was. You have 6 months that she was stepping up in weight for the first time in the first fight. Look, she had stepped up in weight before, but you have 6 months to kind of condition yourself to do it again. And what's interesting is she said she barely watched the first fight back. She only watched a little bit of it. And again, that goes back to you, Owen, were at the Champions Cup launch talking to Gary Ringrose about how he has watched back the Ireland-New Zealand game. And we kind of spoke to Keith Wood about that last week, about how it's important to learn from your mistakes. But obviously she is able to say to her team, you can look back at that.
Do this for me.
Yeah. It's too painful to watch. And
when you think about it, there's actually some precedent in her career for what's happened here. A massive emotional letdown, a period of retrenchment, and then a surge forward in recovery. You think about the Olympics and all the pressure and the devastation that there was there, and a sense that maybe that was the end of everything. But for, sliding into Eddie Hearn's DMs going, hang on a second, might be interested in rekindling my career as a professional. What do you think? And that leads to everything that has come subsequently. There was a significant difference in the pre-fight build-up and the handling, which now retrospectively makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, well, she did say last week, she said, I just want to fight. I'm kind of, all the talking is done. And I just wondered then, if Croke Park happens, then that becomes a new story of now, you've had your 2 fights in Dublin, but this is the 3rd fight. This is the big one. This is Croke Park. Is she going to have to do more media, or do her team say, look, let's try and keep her out of the limelight? It's Katie Taylor. Katie Taylor doesn't need sound bites to sell a fight.
No, at the same time, it's a Big Owl stadium. If you are doing a stadium fight, that there will definitely be a promotional tour. Maybe it's a promotional tour 3 months in advance. I don't know.
She's just present as well. She doesn't need to resort to anything. She never has when it comes to throwing out verbal barbs here and there. She just maybe needs to. There will need to be a presence on the back pages more regularly to sell that stadium out.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And maybe Jer's idea is the way to approach it, where you do it so far out that then, she retreats into her training camp and then it's all business, and let her do what she does best. And I think I thought that was a more definitive decision than the first fight. I watched the first fight back last week, which is always a good thing because it's 6 months after the event and all the emotion has gone out of it. So I've watched back Saturday's fight. I watched it back again yesterday, and it's still quite raw, but you have to try and detach yourself from what went on. And I just felt, watching the fight on Saturday at the halfway stage, so 2 of the judges have her 3-2 up, one has 4-1. So the judge that gave it a 98-92, and a lot of people scoffed at that card, but you could have made a case for a 97-93 win on the cards for Katie Taylor. I think the first round is Cameron's round. I think it's a knockdown. I mean, it's not a punch that hurt Katie Taylor, but she was just retreating and she was a little bit off balance. But if you were put to the ground because of a punch, that's a knockdown.
Yeah. What was it if it wasn't a knockdown? What did the referee seem to think it was?
It's like a slipper, a tangle of the feet. Sometimes your feet can get caught. Like 2 orthodox fighters, it's not as common as it would be, say, if you were fighting a southpaw or whatever. But yeah, and look, if you look back at it, their feet are very close to each other. the ref,
Yeah.
could have seen something. What happened at Goodison Park? A ref thought he saw something yesterday
Yeah.
with feet, and then when you look at the replay, you're like, oh, maybe something different did happen. But split second, the ref decided it was a slip because, as I said, she was retreating. It wasn't a punch that hurt her, but it was a significant jab, which Cameron didn't land those. And halfway through the fight, so I suppose the difference watching the fight back is you can kind of maybe take more heed of what's been said in the corners. And Jamie Moore and Chantelle Cameron's corner knew at the halfway stage, like, this isn't going well. You need to start getting the jab going, because that was her success in the first fight. But
Right.
Katie Taylor just was able to keep her at arm's length. And, she was more in the centre of the ring as well. She just looked stronger. She looked stronger this time around. Even I thought, as I said, when they squared off at the start of the fight, you kind of thought, okay, there's not as big a difference in size as we think there is.
Yeah, there was still a difference.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think, in a way, that is why it's such an incredible story. It's like you're fighting the bigger fighter who now has the confidence of having beaten you the first time. So, when you're trying to put some context on this in terms of great Irish fights, like, it is right there.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And some of the action, the 7th round when they stood toe to toe, the 8th round was the way Cameron wanted to fight, where she completely roughed up Katie Taylor. She landed uppercuts. The uppercut was a very successful punch in the first fight. She couldn't really get it going. What Katie Taylor did very well on Saturday was she got her combos off, their eye-catching combos, and then she was able to get in and hold. And the referee would break them up, but at no point did he warn Katie Taylor for holding. You could see it was frustrating. Chantelle Cameron, her corner, said to her at one stage, look, you stop looking at the ref. We are the ones that are going to shout at the ref. And you could hear them shouting throughout the fight about holding. But I said that was a tactic that worked for Katie Taylor. Anytime there was a trade-off with the two of them, Katie Taylor's quick hands were the ones that caught the eye. They got the crowd cheering as well. So all that played in. And I kind of felt, as I said, at the halfway stage, I kind of was leaning towards Katie Taylor as a 4-1 advantage, and just navigate the final 5 rounds, win a couple of rounds, and you have this fight.
She looked fitter, or she managed to stay the course that longer as a result of the tactical approach you mentioned there?
Big time, yeah. She didn't get caught in the ropes. There was 1 or 2 stages during the fight where she was in on the ropes, but she slipped out of it. Whereas in the first fight, there was times like Chantelle Cameron's brilliant at closing the ring off, but at stages in the fight on Saturday, she's closing the ring off, but she's putting so much energy into that. Then by the time she actually gets to Katie Taylor's there to land the first punch. So as I said, the 8th round took a lot out of Katie Taylor, and Ross Ename in the corner says after, is like, don't let her back into this fight. Like, this is your night. And then Taylor responds in true Katie Taylor fashion. And, you could arguably have given her the last 2 rounds. But, it was brilliant. A lot of people talked about her age, 37, 5 years older than Chantelle Cameron. But all that talk kind of went out the window then after the fight.
Yeah. I don't mind if she retires, rides off into the sunset after a victory like this. It's because boxing is so brutal and the damage is so, difficult to overcome and so long term. I was kind of in the minority thinking that there's a possibility it might happen. Like, I don't think she will, but because she was so definitive in the immediate aftermath, she wants Croke Park.
Yeah. She wants the trilogy, but if the trilogy just doesn't happen, then you've got Amanda Serrano, who obviously has been on the phone or on social media to Eddie Hearn saying straight away. But that's the beauty of sport. When you put yourself in, when you win, it opens the door. 2024 looks a lot brighter now for Katie Taylor. Look, if she didn't win on Saturday, there was still options. There's always going to be options because people want to fight Katie Taylor. They know if you're in the ring with Katie Taylor, people are watching her fight. She sells the fights, but now she gets the pick. Now, to be honest, I'd say it doesn't matter who she gets. She'll fight whoever it is. She just wants that fight in Croke Park.
What would you do? What's the ideal scenario here? Is there a make-weight fight that isn't at Chantelle Cameron's, that isn't for the belts, that's just a trilogy, and that is slightly more advantageous for Katie Taylor, down a few pounds?
No, I think they'll go at the same weight. Like, it's just interesting listening to her talk about when you lose a fight, you don't want to talk too much about what went wrong in terms of the build up and all, but you can now address that after the second fight when you've won, just to say that she didn't feel at her best going into the first fight, and she said it in the ring after it, that she, knowing that she wasn't anywhere near her best, she still put up good showing in the first fight. I said, watching it back last week, the first fight was a lot closer on the cards for me than Saturday night's was. And Katie Taylor was obviously on the wrong side of it. But so it wasn't as dominant a performance. I think people were just surprised to see Katie Taylor beaten, and maybe they thought, like, if she's beaten, that's probably that. Like, but there's a lot of factors that go into a fight. Like, most fighters carry certain injuries into fights, but if you can go into a fight feeling close to your full fitness, then your confidence is through the roof.
Taylor beat Serrano in a split decision in Madison Square Garden that time.
Yeah.
Would that be a better fight at her preferred weight to take in Croke Park and then do the trilogy after that? Because irrespective of whether or not you beat Serrano, you still have the Cameron belts for after that to fight for. So you give yourself an insurance policy.
Yeah. I mean, that's up to Katie Taylor and her team. They could fight Serrano at 140 if they want. Obviously, Serrano has fought at several different weights, so it wouldn't be an issue for her. So it's up to Katie Taylor. Maybe Katie Taylor thinks, do you know what, I might fancy it at 140. It means I don't have to shed the extra 5, But regardless of who it is, if it's Serrano or Chantelle Cameron, it's still going to be a tight fight. Like, it's one of those 50-50s.
Yeah.
Which is brilliant for the sport, because, Katie Taylor would be well within her rights to pick handy fights, but she doesn't do it. And that's what we love about her, that, here she is, 37 years of age, and you could just see what that fight and that win meant to her on Saturday night. So you can put the feet up now for Christmas, spend a bit of time with her family, and then look forward to 2024.
What's realistic in terms of the number of fights that she has left in her career?
How many times would she want to fight in 2024? At least she'd want 2 or 3. Could that be it then?
It could be.
I suppose how things go will define that decision. But, like, Katie Taylor, like, her life is boxing.
See, I definitely have heard that conversation be made, but that's what we know. She's very private in most aspects of her life, so maybe she's got loads of other hobbies. Maybe she's a painter, or
She's a good footballer as well.
So you hope that there's enough in whatever comes after her boxing career to give her fulfillment, and that she started to begin to think about life after boxing, because it's going to happen at some point. But if it was a farewell fight, it might help to sell Croke Park in some ways. This is going to be literally your last ever chance to see this icon of Irish sport in the flesh fighting, and they're doing it. That's another one.
Yeah, I think the fact that it's Katie Taylor and Croke Park, you don't even need that. I just think this is your chance to see Katie Taylor at Croke Park, and it's, as Eddie Hearn said on Saturday after the fight, it makes things a bit more accessible for more fans to get there, because you don't have to pay the higher prices you would have had to pay to go on Saturday night. And it's an event. You think of the events that have been held at Croke Park, apart from GAA matches, that people in Ireland like to go to events. So there will be an attraction there for people who never have gone to boxing before, the fact that it's Katie Taylor at Croke Park. So I don't think you need to say this is the farewell fight. I don't think we'll ever get that with Katie Taylor in terms of before a fight where she'll say, this is my last one.
Yeah.
I don't think she'll do that.
Okay. Again, in terms of, say you're Brian Peters, what's the best course here? What's the most, the safest course? Because there's nothing safe, but what's the least risky course?
Well, I don't think, I say if you're fighting Serrano or Chantelle Cameron, they're both are really tough fights, and they're both equally as risky. I suppose the difference with the Katie Taylor, Chantelle Cameron, the possibility of a trilogy. So what can Cameron learn from what happened on Saturday night? Katie learned a lot from the first fight. Her team obviously went back and looked and said, this is what we have to change. We have to take Cameron's jab out of it. You know, we have to meet her in the centre of the ring. But at the same time, you know, just take a step back after landing shots and don't get caught up against the ropes. So what will Chantelle Cameron's corner or team take out of Saturday night? What will they be able to learn from? Sometimes it is easier to make adjustments after losing a fight, where, you know, if you win, you kind of think, why change the formula? And that's the way they went into the fight on Saturday. But Chantelle Cameron had promised a better performance because she wasn't carrying any injuries going into the fight, but Katie Taylor was just better than her on the night. But again, they could fight in a month's time and Cameron could be better. That's how close they are. The styles will always make it a great fight. Serrano...
that's why you'll sell tickets to it as well.
Serrano's style as well, being a southpaw. You know, that fight in Madison Square Garden was unbelievable last year. Like those two fights, the fight on Saturday night and the Serrano fight last year are like two of the best fights you'll see. So it doesn't matter who it is. And then now we have a bit of an Irish scene going on. Paddy Donovan won again. I mean, Andy Lee's been talking about him since he took him on, saying this lad is a serious talent, and he showed that on Saturday night. And if it is Croke Park, you can bring an international flavour to it as well. Who wouldn't want to fight in Croke Park? Some of the best.
So the undercard could be good as well.
Absolutely. Well, I think you have to do that as well. Obviously, there will be an Irish flavour to it, but you could attract a big international fight on that as well, maybe as a co-main event. But I said, look, things are certainly look a lot brighter after Saturday night for Katie Taylor. Look, regardless of what happened, I don't think that would have been her last fight. But now,
it definitely isn't.
It definitely isn't. And anyone that doubted Katie Taylor because of her age and the fact that she was beaten, I mean, like,
I think I definitely had those doubts. Just because when you see sports people lose a sense of invincibility when a team gets caught at the end of a run, you're like, well, it's very difficult for them to go back and find the source of inspiration that they had in the first place. And they're fighting somebody younger, bigger. You're not supposed to be able to come back from that.
Yeah.
And that's why it's even better, I think.
Absolutely.
I definitely had those doubts.
No, I get that, but I suppose what I mean, it wasn't like Manny Pacquiao destroying Oscar De La Hoya when you knew watching that fight, you're like, this is the end for Oscar. Like, it wasn't like that. It was a really close fight. I think we were all just a bit taken aback by the fact that Katie Taylor lost and the way it was done. But actually, as I say, when you kind of just took the emotion out of it, take a few months and then watch the fight back, it was a close fight. That, a few other rounds went, like one judge scored the first fight as a draw, the other two gave it by one round. That's how close it was.
Right.
And that's what Katie said, that,
She
that's
just
how
needed to transform 2 or 3 rounds.
the best version of Katie turns up, and then in her own eyes, she knew she could win. And that's what she said on Saturday after the fight.
And
She
still
said,
ship the punishment.
but less punishment.
What impact do you think the clash of heads had?
I don't think it had. Like, Chantelle Cameron is an unbelievable fighter, and I don't think it had any impact on her. It didn't affect her confidence or anything like that. It was just an injury that you pick up. But the blood obviously was coming down, but it wasn't just above her eye. So it wasn't going to mess with her view or her vision or anything like that. So I don't think it had any impact. Obviously, she lost blood, but these people that they have working on the cuts are so good that they can stem that.
What do you think Katie Taylor was reading during the week or listening to during the week that allowed her to form this view that she was written off? Because she certainly didn't do as much media as she used to. I kind of get the sense that she's often quite closed off from what's being said on the outside, but clearly she was letting something dribble in, something that would suggest that she was being written off, which she used as motivation. Yeah,
but I think if you lose, that's your motivation anyway, to avenge that defeat. I don't know, like, does she sit down going through all the papers saying this, they've written me off, they think I'm going to lose, I don't know. You'd have to ask her that. I'm sure. I don't know if she would give you an answer on that, but I know, like, she was quite vocal after the fight, saying, "I can't believe people had written me off." And she made a lot of people look quite foolish on Saturday night when she turned up, and she was back to the Katie Taylor that we're used to seeing, and we didn't get to see in May. And look, other factors as well. Now you didn't have people talking about your homecoming because that was done.
Yeah.
And look, it obviously took its toll. All that, like the homecoming, your first professional fight in Dublin. And
should have taken an easy first professional fight in Dublin, maybe, like a tomato can, but as you say, she didn't do it.
She doesn't do that. And, that's why Katie Taylor will be talked about for years to come in boxing, like for what she's done to get the boxing, women's boxing to the Olympics. And now, she has just put women's boxing, professional boxing on the map. And look, who thought, like, when she got in touch with Eddie Hearn after the Olympics, that it would go this well? I certainly didn't. I knew that it was going to be interesting to see how she'd adapt to the professional boxing, because what you saw in certain parts of the fight on Saturday night is something you just wouldn't see in amateur boxing, where it's all about scoring punches, and there's very little of that physical. Well, like, it's obviously physical, but as I said, like the 8th round in particular, where Chantelle Cameron's got her shoulders in Katie Taylor's face, and it's just,
she was starting to use that properly. From her perspective.
Yeah, and think back to the Pursoon fight, that kind of stuff, like where that was the worry. Like, could Katie Taylor, translate what she did in the amateurs into professional boxing? And she has done that, because when you have the hand speed and all that, it's unbelievable to watch.
Hold that